So today we are continuing our subtle body series and we're talking about karma. And we've talked about karma before and how more, it's very simple, but it's more complicated than most people realize because every action creates a ripple in a pond of existence. And all of these ripples are ongoing, and every new action creates yet another ripple, and then it develops all of these conditions in which we live. And every action that we do is one of the causes of those conditions. So we are in this ocean of karma, the sea of constantly changing conditions. And we can influence it. It's a little presumptuous to say that we can somehow control everything, but we can certainly influence it through our own causes, the things that we do. So part of our path of Trikaya Buddhism is to use karma intelligently, to understand that the things that we do have an impact, not just on our lives, but on the entire collective. And that makes our practice all the more important and all the more serious and all the more powerful. So when we talk about karma, there's different types of karma. There is physical karma, which has been going on from beginningless time. So when we create causes within physical karma, sometimes it takes a really, really long time to see the conditions arise. Other times, it's pretty quickly. If I take this glass of water and I dump it, then the water's going to fall out. That's like instant karma, right? But if you slam on your brakes on the freeway and then start going again, there will be this delayed reaction as the people behind you step on their brakes, and then the people behind them step on their brakes, and so on and so on. And then eventually it kind of fizzles out. Now, when we talk about the subtle body, the energy of life, the karma seems to move much faster. There's still this endless rippling effect that happens, but we can start to see the change in the conditions much, much faster. And you can play with this yourself by watching your mind, by practicing mindfulness, by paying attention, asking yourself, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? How am I perceiving the world right now? In the pith instructions, which let me see if I can share them with you. I pulled them up on a little picture. We recommend to plant seeds to support your awakening. So we make every thought an act of love. We make every spoken word an act of service. And we make every movement of the body an act of wisdom. So what does that actually mean? This is all taking place in our energy body. That's where it begins. That's where we see the most profound effect is on our energy first. We can do this at a very physical surface level, and we'll see little changes. But if we do it internally with our actual energy and how we hold ourselves, that's where we start to see really big, dramatic changes very, very quickly. So when we're practicing mindfulness, once we have learned to actually perceive our thoughts as they're arising and as they're falling away, and we start to play the game of focusing on beauty or focusing on gratitude and actually watching how we can influence our mind state by holding our mind in a certain way, we can set an intention with our energy to make every thought be born from love. So we practice this loving kindness. We can do some metta meditation to help kind of prime our mind. We can do this throughout the day where we consciously center our mind on love and that feeling of connection with our own being and with all other beings. When we do this repeatedly over and over and over again, then the very thoughts that are born in our mind start to sprout from this love that we've been cultivating. Now, of course, because of the sea of causes and conditions, other thoughts will pop up just like weeds do in a garden. You can do your practice absolutely perfectly and be able to hold your mind in a state of love continually. And there will still be these random thoughts that pop up just because of the karmic rolling of that wheel of karma. So when it does, it's important to realize that you have not failed, because that's just another form of beating ourselves up, of self-loathing. Instead, it's an invitation to take responsibility for a past action, for a past karma, for allowing that pattern to have erupted at some prior point. It might not even have been in this lifetime. It might have been something you picked up from somewhere else, like even from the media that we expose ourselves to. If we watch certain videos and TV shows, movies, listen to certain types of music, they are implanting a certain energy into our body. And it may or may not be based in love. So when you notice these disruptive thoughts that are not peaceful, that are not based in love, we just observe them, and then we reaffirm that intention. May every thought be an act of love. How can I return my mind to that ground of love? And we do this over and over again. Now, when it comes to speech, we don't just say whatever comes to our mind. You know, we pay attention to where those words are coming from. If we're doing the first part of the practice of making every thought an act of love, then the words that are spoken naturally become an act of service. One builds on the other. But as you're working on the first part, you can continue to work on the second part of making every spoken word an act of service. So when you're in a situation and you feel like, oh, I want to say something, you can just pause for a half a moment and say, well, how can I say this as a service? How can this be from compassion? Is this actually helpful? Is it true? Sometimes you can say something that is true, but it's not helpful. It's actually harmful in some cases. So we can remind ourselves and make that intention, may every spoken word be an act of service. And throughout the day, remind ourselves of this intention, of this goal. And it starts to pervade our energy. It starts to pervade every part of our being. And you'll find yourself when you do this practice, sometimes a habitual pattern will come up, an old energetic pattern, and you'll be about to say something and you'll feel that sense of hesitation. And that's a wonderful opportunity to realize how much you've grown, to say, oh, before I would have just, blurted that out. But now I'm realizing that, oh, if I say it in this way, it's actually beneficial. There's actually some compassion there. And so we can start to adjust a little bit more. And then it creates this wonderful feedback into our thoughts, because now we're focusing on our expression from our throat chakra of compassion. And then that feeds into our mind, and we reside more and more in loving kindness. Now, the final piece is may make every movement of the body an act of wisdom. It's important to consider what is wisdom. This is a wonderful thing to contemplate. Like, what does wisdom actually mean? In Trikaya Buddhism, wisdom refers to the understanding or the deep knowledge of the interconnectedness of life, that everything that we do affects everyone else, and the transitory nature of everything. So there's this very deep felt knowing that nothing lasts, that everything is temporary, and everything is connected. Which, when we understand both sides of that, it becomes wisdom. Because if we go around saying, well, everything's transitory, therefore nothing matters, we can fall into nihilism, where, well, it's all just temporary, so who cares? It's here today, it's gone tomorrow, it's not going to last, nothing matters. But when we understand the other part of it, that everything is connected, then we start to realize that, oh, wait, it is transitory, but it all matters. Everything matters. The way that we move our body through a room, when we go to the grocery store, or when we walk down the street, the way we hold our energy matters. Our energy is constantly fluctuating. Sometimes we feel very strong and very bright, and our energy is pushing out. And then other times, we feel very fragile, and we want to kind of compartmentalize and separate. And when we're in that more compressed aspect, sometimes we get a little pokey. Sometimes we get these really sharp edges that are meant to protect us because we're feeling very vulnerable. So we start to hold our energy in such a way that what we start to radiate is very abrasive. There's an anger quality to it. There's a roughness that scrapes against everyone and everything that we pass by. And that ripples out. That creates a certain type of karma, not only for you, but for everyone that you interact with. So when we consider the karma of our subtle body, we also make every movement of our subtle body an act of wisdom. We pay close attention to how we're holding our energy. We pay close attention to the energy that we're placing on our surroundings, on the room that we're in, the messages that we send. if we're sending an email, a good practice is to take a moment when you're done writing it and to just scan it for a moment and do the checks. Did this email arise out of love? Is every word of service? And is the energy behind it, the body of it, out of wisdom? And we can take a moment to adjust all of those as necessary before we hit send. And this is just another way that we can start to incorporate this very, very powerful practice into our life. And what's really cool about playing with the karma of the subtle body is we often get to see the results very, very quickly. So even something like cleaning our home, you can clean your bathroom and feel very annoyed that you have to clean it, like very angry, very resistant. And if you have all those thoughts while you're doing it, or you could listen to, an angry podcast about all the horrors of the world as you're cleaning. And guess what? That energy is going to get imprinted in that room and you'll forget all about it. And then, you go in there later and you just hit that wall of energy and it affects your being. Now, on the other hand, you can approach cleaning as this dharma task of, oh, let me play with this and see how well I can control my thoughts, my expressions, and the movement of my body in such a way that there is light coming through. And you can put on really high and happy, bouncy music. You can watch your thoughts and how you're holding your subtle body and push it into those very high, bright planes of light and then clean. And when you do that, you'll leave the room when you're all done. And hours later, you might walk in there and then all of a sudden just be hit by this brightness. So it's this wonderful gift that we can leave ourselves energetically everywhere we go. And the more we do this, we start to create these new patterns where just like when we're doing our beginner mindfulness and we start to build the habit of beauty and gratitude, like every time our mind sinks into the gutter and we start thinking heavy, harmful thoughts, if we have trained ourselves, we'll automatically flip back into gratitude and beauty. That's what discipline is over time. We've just done it enough times where the moment you recognize that, oh, I'm in the gutter, then, oh, boom, your mind is just automatically drawn back to beauty or gratitude. We can do the same thing energetically. We can start to learn to hold our being in this very bright, beautiful, positive way where we are radiating love, compassion, and wisdom. That even when we get completely knocked off balance, even if we get, pummeled by this tidal wave of harsh, abrasive energy, we just pop right back up. And our energy kind of just settles back into this very bright space. So I highly recommend practicing the karma of your subtle body and play with this concept. Don't just let it be a passing thought, but really work it and see how you can incorporate it into every single aspect of your life. So see what happens when you do that. Did you guys have any questions? No. Okay. We'll do some meditation next.